Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Podcast. You'll learn how successful people just like you have grown their businesses, expanded their influence, and made money by writing a book. On each episode, you'll learn the inside secrets to help you create a book that can serve as a powerful marketing tool to skyrocket your business. I'm your host, Janal. I help thought leaders, business executives, and entrepreneurs write their books. To find out more and to download our show notes, go to topbusinessleaders.com. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome my old friend, John Jantsch. Welcome.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Hey, I've known John for well more than a decade. He's written a zillion best-selling books, true best-selling books that have stood the test of time. In fact, he's really helped to launch the entrepreneurial revolution with his Duct Tape Marketing book. And he's here today to tell us how he created his new book, which is called The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, 366 Daily Meditations to Feed Your Soul and Grow Your Business. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write the book?
Well, so I have to correct you. It's not quite a zillion books, but I have written 5 previous books. This is actually my 6th book, and my previous books are squarely in the realm of marketing and small business. The 6th book is a very different book for me, and it had a whole different process. We can get into the mechanics of it. It was, it is structured as a 366 daily. So every page is essentially a different thought. And I anchored every page with taking readings or writings from a body of work, mid-19th century. So I did a whole bunch of research for this book, found what I think is a vein of some of the best entrepreneurial writing ever still today. I use that to kind of launch into a new thought every day for an entrepreneur. So this book won't tell you how to do anything like my previous books. It's really more, I think I like to talk about it as this book will tell you why to do everything. So the premise is that if you go to work on yourself as an entrepreneur, I think that act alone will help you grow a better business.
Okay, great. Let's get into the thought process first, and then we'll get into the actual mechanics of the book. Now,
Sure.
You're very well known for helping entrepreneurs build their businesses, and a lot of my clients want to write a book to help build their business, as you have done, and then they say, is that enough? Do I need another book? You've taken a sort of a completely different approach now, because you've written 5 books in the past that were sequential. They made sense for entrepreneurs. They grew the entrepreneurial business, which makes sense. Now you decide to take a left turn, so to speak. What inspired you to do this?
Well, cynically, I'll say maybe I was a little burned out writing about marketing, but the truth of the matter is, what I've found is that the marketing is such an important element of growing a business. A lot of entrepreneurs, in many ways, have a great idea, a great product, a great service, a great business. They can't get it off the ground because they don't understand how to go to market, how to get traction with their business, and so the business kind of sucks the life out of them. And so, really, even though over the last 30 years I've worked extensively in marketing, when I work with a lot of small business owners, I feel like I'm a life coach, a psychiatrist. You really get into the whole, guts of the business because, marketing kind of touches everything. I've been a business owner myself for 30 years. And so a lot of ways what I wanted to do with this book was do something different. Let's face it. And then also create something that, maybe was going to be representative of my experience as an entrepreneur and could maybe give people some help, whether they call it wisdom or advice, could give them some help about how to think about their businesses as well. So it is clearly a highly personal book. It was the hardest book I've had to write or that I've chosen to write. But it's something that I felt like I wanted to give to the world. We'll see if anybody, receives the gift, but that was kind of the idea behind it.
Great. And how do you intend to build your business with that book?
So this book I do a lot of speaking as well as consulting. And I have given that some thought. I mean, when I've written books before, it's like, and here's the 7-step talk, and here's the, here's the course, and here's, the consulting and coaching model from it. This book, is substantially different. What I think I'll do with this book is I definitely will get invited and have already been invited to speak on some stages, entrepreneurial startup inspiration, and not necessarily about 7 ways to do email marketing better. So that will change, but also fundamentally, my whole approach to marketing is that strategy comes before tactics, and that marketing is a system. And a lot of small business strategy, frankly, I think needs to be steeped in purpose and what the impact that you want your business to have when you're gone. And I think that I will necessarily bring some of this back into the more kind of strategic component of work that I do with businesses. So I think in some ways, some people might actually say, well, it'll move you a little bit into management consulting almost. And there may be some truth to that, but I just think that it's hard to work with a small business owner and not take a holistic approach.
Great. It might help our listeners to hear one of your daily tips or devotionals or ideas.
Yeah. I don't think I'd call them tips. People have been referring to them as meditations, and kind of the way that it's structured is every day has a new entry. It has a title. It has some writing from, I'm trying to find the right one I want to do here, has some writing from the period that I mentioned of, a lot of works that people will recognize because they are, Walden and Moby Dick and Scarlet Letter and, things we were asked to read in school. Here we go. Found one.
Some of us actually read some of those books.
Yeah, some. What's funny though is obviously this book gave me the excuse to go back and reread a lot of that, and boy, those works have changed a lot. Let me tell you, or maybe I've changed. I'm not sure which it is. But here's the reading I've chosen for today. So depending upon when people listen to this, this is September 26th. So the title is Original Giftedness. Human character evermore publishes itself. The most fugitive deed and word, the mere air of doing a thing, the intimidated purpose, express character. If you act, you show character. If you sit still, if you sleep, you show it. Ralph Waldo Emerson, an essay called Spiritual Laws, written in 1841. And so then my take on it to make it relevant today. Emerson's concept of spirituality was based largely on the idea that we must follow our own unique and original path, no matter how hard society pushes back. That our character evermore publishes itself, no matter, but our true character shines through only as we reclaim our original self. But here's the problem. Our self-reliance is something we have to fight for, overcome for, and regain as part of our original self. And it runs counter to what we've been told most of our life. Parker Palmer, author of Let Your Life Speak, describes that fight this way. We are disabused of original giftedness in the first half of our life. Then if we are awake, aware, and able to admit our loss, we spend the second half of life trying to recover and reclaim the gift we once possessed. Trying to be what we are not robs us of becoming who we might be. Today, reclaim some part of your original giftedness. And I end every day with a question. So your question for today is, what was the best non-holiday, non-special event day of your life? Why?
Very interesting. Tell us, how did you think of that format? What inspired you?
Well, I did not make it up. It is a format that's pretty proven. In fact, I have a book that I've had for years called The Daily Drucker, and it dives into, somebody curated all of Peter Drucker's works into kind of a daily devotional like that as well with an action step. It is a pretty proven format. But I think also we're talking about, I don't know if this is self-help or inspiration or, what category this would fall into. But I don't think you pick a book like that up, read it cover to cover and go, okay, I got it. I'm self-reliant now. I mean, I really think that one of the things that if I were going to define what a self-reliant entrepreneur is, it's somebody that realizes their life is a work in progress. And that, so the idea behind this daily, you got 2-minute read, You pick it up every morning. Maybe it fits into part of your routine anyway, and it gives you something really to think about for the day. It gives you kind of a centering thought, and then you go out about your day and you come back and do it again tomorrow. So it's almost like if you embrace this book and you really get into this book, it becomes a daily practice. And I think that's how we evolve.
Fascinating. You know, I thought your inspiration would have been from the Christian community or the religious community, because I've seen that with daily as
Yeah,
well.
and in fact, my grandmother worked for Unity, the Unity Church based in Kansas City, and they put out something called the Daily Word. And of course, we got that for Christmas every year, and it was a little kind of a pamphlet size. It would come, once a month, and it did have some. So I can give even if it's subconsciously, I'll give a shout out to the Daily Word.
Oh, sure. But when I was reading through your book, I was thinking that A, it took a lot of research, and B, you're just not reprinting stuff from Ralph Waldo Emerson and others. You're actually adding your own value to that.
Yeah,
And I know a
hopefully.
lot of our listeners and the people I coach, they wonder about how to deal with original source material and make it their own and add value to it. Can you tell us about your thought process about how you selected something, how you and
Yeah,
how it
one of
went
the
through your
things are
brain and came out as
yes.
something else with more value?
Yeah, so a couple things went into it. This was a body of work that I think is some of the greatest entrepreneurial writing. It is in the public domain, so that checks off another box because of the age of the material. So that made it easier for me to source it. But I also wanted to go deep. These are not Pinterest quotes. These some of these readings are things that were certainly I sourced. Walden and Moby Dick and some well-known things, but I also sourced a lot of their letters and journals and things to really get into their thinking, and so that was you're absolutely right. I mean, that was 6 months of research just all by itself before I wrote a word, and so. That kind of was my thinking. I then organized the book, and again, when you're talking about 366, I mean, the physical organization of it, was important as well. And so I kind of feel that there are seasons to an entrepreneurial journey. And obviously the metaphor works great for the seasons of the year. So I broke that up into seasons, and then within the season, you have 3 months in a season. Every month actually has a theme. So today's reading I read from September, the theme was actually congruence, the idea of your actions and your words being aligned. And so that helped me actually then go out and not just read books, but actually go out and search for content that fit that theme. And the pages are not, overtly like, oh, this is about truth or this is about love, but it runs through those. And it allowed me to kind of organize the themes. And the readings, and then as far as my own kind of making it relevant, I am a member of the audience in this particular book. I mean, I am one of us, and so it was a choice that I made early on was to actually not use any first person. And so I really am writing as, we need to do this, we need to consider this, and I think that. My hope was that felt softer than telling people what to do. That it was more like we were having a conversation about what my experiences are, and there's no question that this is full of. If you want to know what John Jantsch believes, this book is full of what John Jantsch believes. But I think there are some universal themes and truths throughout the book.
So it took you 6 months to research the book.
Yeah.
I always tell my clients that one story could have 5 or 10 or an infinite number of morals. Did you find that you found the stories that fit your theme, or your theme fit your stories, or which came first, the chicken or the egg?
I created the themes because I believed at least that was a great way to structure the book. And then I went out and found I had also parameters of who I was looking, what works I was looking for. And then I went out in many cases and found something that I felt fit into that theme. So there are many, Ralph Waldo Emerson is probably the most represented author in this book, maybe Thoreau. I'll have to tabulate that someday. But he wrote about a lot. He wrote a number of his original essays, cover a lot of ground. And so, he's highly represented for that reason. But there were certainly some cases where I've stumbled onto very little known authors. It was important for me to try to represent as many women authors as possible, which given the time frame was very difficult to do. And so I did go out looking, and I think that helped me focus. When I first started, I just started reading books about transcendentalists, about the time period, some of the books, the works, and I wasn't making much ground, and when I kind of got that organizational structure down, then I could actually go out hunting instead of just hoping to stumble.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, do you have an index of topics? So if someone says, gee, I need some inspiration, or I need some ideas, or I need whatever, they can go in and find it.
Well, I wouldn't say, one of the challenges with this book is if you start out knowing it's 366 pages, it's going to grow to 400 pages, which it did, very easily. So the publisher decided not to add an index, which really would have been a massive undertaking. I know there are programs that help do some of that, but it would have been a pretty massive undertaking, and it would have added, 20 more pages probably. But every page is marked with the season that it's in and the theme that it's in. And so, if you're looking for the theme, say, trust, or the theme failure, you can find it in that, because it's assigned to a month.
Interesting. Great. Yeah, I was looking for I need this. How can I find it fast? So you thought about that. Great. What did you learn while writing this book?
Well, it's interesting. I like to think that I learned, and I think most authors would admit that they learn something when they write a book. You go out and you do some research, you structure it, you think about things. But admittedly, most of my other books, I wrote from what I had learned. I'd gone out and tested something. Here's how I do this in social media. It might work for you. I'd write about it. In this particular book, it really sent me on, no surprise here, but I think a pretty big journey of sort of self-study. There's no way to write a book like this without some examination of what you believe and what you've been doing, and have you lived up to some of the questions that you're asking in this book. So I probably learned more about myself personally. I learned more about the impact I think that I want to have on the world. I certainly feel as though I really learned, and I've always believed this, but I feel like I really embraced more this idea that we're not in control of the outcome of every situation, and that we cause ourselves a lot of stress trying to be, and that actually letting go and detaching from how something happens while you stay fixated on maybe the outcome, the ultimate goal that you want to reach, and that's amazing that one idea, which I did not invent, certainly practicing that one idea, I think actually returned a bit of joy and kind of happiness back to what I was doing.
Great. What do you think about the impact on different generations? You think boomers and Gen X and millennials will relate to Ralph Waldo Emerson and Harriet Beecher Stowe and people from the 18th century?
Yeah, it's funny because in writing a book like this, I did a lot of testing. I sent entries to people and said, "What do you think?" People of different ages, different backgrounds, completely. And I did feel like there was a bit of a universal agreement. People my age, there definitely was the idea that, oh yeah, this is coming from a point of wisdom. This is coming from obviously they recognize the works. But I think they were more focused on the idea that this is how you stay focused on the impact that you want to create. Younger generation, millennials, that I shared this with, I think come to it with really. So many of them, we've been reading these books for 100 years, right? So many of them were exposed to a lot of these works as well. But I think many of them are so early in their journey that, in some ways they're just starting to kind of hit their head against the wall. And they gained, I think, a little more inspiration and energy around the idea that one of the themes in the book is, hey, you're enough right now. You got this. Just be true to yourself. You don't have to listen to what other people tell you. And I think that that's a message that really appeals to a younger generation.
What did you learn about yourself as a writing or your craft by writing this book? Because your other books were how-tos. This was more thought leadership in a different way.
Yeah.
How did that change? Or did you learn?
Here is an idea that I know you are going to agree with, Dan. Writing short passages is much harder than writing 5,000 words. So each page, theoretically, in 200 words, whether I accomplished it or not, the goal was to have one really impactful kind of moment where somebody goes, wow, or ah, or aha. And, that's a lot harder than just, drawing on for, page after page, getting ready to make your point. You have to make your point, I think, pretty quickly. And many of the pages I just wrote, and then of course they have to physically fit into one page. That was the goal. And so in some cases, there was a bit of cutting down, and really getting to the point faster. A lot of times when I cut something out, it was the first 3 sentences because I was clearing my throat for 3 sentences, and I didn't have that kind of runway. And so it really did teach me as a writer to get to the point right away.
Great. I'll ask one final question. We'll wrap up, and you can tell everyone how they can get in touch with you and get your book. And that is, going back to another point you made earlier about this isn't a Pinterest quote. I love that because the internet is full of one-line pithy quotes, and we wonder about today's short attention span. I love the fact that each of your messages fits on one page. How do you think people's attention spans are today, and will they respond to a daily piece like this?
Sure.
Was that part of your motivation to keep it that short?
It definitely was part of my motivation. I mean, if I could show you, my desk right now, you'd see a stack of books that I'm meaning to get to. And I think a lot of us have that stack of books. The idea behind this was that I think universally entrepreneurs have embraced this idea of a morning routine, whether it's meditation or exercise or journaling or, doing something to kind of get their day off with a bang. And so my hope is that this maybe fits into people's morning routines. It becomes a daily practice. I end every day with that question. And there's actually in the book a couple lines for you to jot some notes. And so, my hope is that I'm going to be able to engage, let's say hundreds of thousands. Let's be optimistic, right? Hundreds of thousands of readers and entrepreneurs in around how they're answering this question. So, I think in some ways, the book could actually have a community beyond the book and a life of its own. But my first hope is that some people find it as just a good way to start their day.
Great. Remind us again about the name of the book. I'm sure we can find it on Amazon, and I will put it in our show notes with a link to the Amazon page as well.
Sure. It is The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, and I'll read the whole subtitle, 366 Daily Meditations to Feed Your Soul and Grow Your Business. I actually have to read that because I can't remember that off the top of my head. But and you can find it at self-reliantentrepreneur.com, and good luck spelling that. But I think it was George Bush. He probably stole it from somebody else who said that, the problem with the French is that they don't have a word for entrepreneur. But if you Google anything close to that, the Google will direct you to my site, I'm pretty sure.
Great. I'm sure they'll be able to find out information about your consulting and your keynote speaking and your inspirational speaking as well. I'm looking forward to hearing you speak. If you're ever in Minneapolis or San Diego, please let me know. Thank you, John, for being a great guest today, and good luck with your book.
Hey, thank you, Dan.
Thanks for listening to Top Business Leaders, the only podcast that shows you exactly how people just like you have built their businesses by writing a book. If you'd like to write your book but don't know where to start, you can find great information at writeyourbookinaflash.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another insightful interview to help you become a top business leader.